Located in the west of Norfolk and running for 16 miles along the eastern margin of the Wash, the Kings Lynn and Hunstanton Railway opened in 1862. Critical to Hunstanton's development as a popular seaside town, it became a destination in its own right, with excursions and long-distance holiday trains arriving at the station from across the country. But it perhaps invited particular attention with its proximity to the royal estate of Sandringham. In its 107 years of life, the station at Wolferton would be the point at which members of the royal family or visiting dignitaries would board or alight, sometimes for business, sometimes for leisure, sometimes for celebration, or sometimes for commemoration. The railway is not only notable for its royal connections. In 1962, the poet John Betjeman, a lifelong railway enthusiast, featured in a short film documenting the railway and his reflections on the virtues of the English branch line. Entitled John Betjeman Goes by Train, the film was co-produced by British Transport Films and BBC East Anglia. Betjeman's travelogue, with his eye for detail and literary flourish, is a rare and remarkable record of this lost railway. He was not to know that the railway would not live out the decade. And in this case, Dr. Beeching had no hand in the railway's closure. The line was deemed uneconomical by the eastern region of British Rail, which led to its demise in 1969. In this film, we will explore what remains and what there is to rediscover of this lost line. 96 miles and 75 chains from London Liverpool Street, the station for Kings Lynn, known locally as Lynn, has retained its Victorian character. Historically, the station itself was dwarfed by the extensive sidings and network of railways which served this once prosperous port. To the south of the station, which is circled, we see the large sidings running parallel to the main line to London, with the now lost railway to Dereham striking east, and our own railway to Hunstanton due north. To the north of the station, the dock railway extends like tree roots through the town to the port. Today, all but a fraction of these lines are gone. Whilst most passengers enter the front of the building, the station's royal entrance can be found on its north side, permitting Her Majesty the Queen and other members of the royal family an expedient entry or exit from the platform. Indeed, from here we see what is today's Platform 2, from which a majority of local services to Hunstanton originated. Here we see an excursion train for Hunstanton entering the station's eastern end. After reversal, it would depart Lynn, beginning the final leg of its journey for the coast. So we depart. Today the railway's track bed is now occupied by a cycle path. On the A148, however, we find the crossing keeper's house. Once this was all fields, but the railway's course is today on all sides lined by housing, industrial and commercial developments. Thus we leave the busyness of Kings Lynn behind, and, after crossing this characteristically flat landscape for a mile, we find this scout hut built upon the railway's track bed, where once were sidings and a signal box heralding our entry into the first port of call. 3 miles and 19 chains from Kings Lynn is North Wootton. The station was equipped with 2 platforms, with the main station buildings incorporating the booking office and station master's house on the upside. The main station building looks substantially the same today, plus some extensions and minus a functioning railway. As mentioned, there was a signal box to the south side of the station. This was removed in 2008 and transferred 170 miles north to the Wensleydale Heritage Railway, where it now oversees the comings and goings of Leeming Bar Station. So we depart, leaving the cover of the extant shelter on the down platform. On the 3rd of August 1863, a year after the line opened, a passenger train ran into a bullock near North Wootton Station. 5 passengers were killed as a result, with the poor state of the rolling stock being partially to blame. Now, as John Betjeman put it in his 1962 journey along this line, we are coming out of the flatland and into the royal country of Sandringham. Today, not a trace of the railway which passed through this field can be found. But guarding entry to the Sandringham estate now, as it did when Betjeman travelled, is the church of St Peter, Wolferton, with its tall tower, nave and chancel. and in its shadow the only discernible trace of the railway at this point, the delightful crossing keeper's house. Trains would slow as they approached the next station. And indeed, as these pictures show, they were about to enter a station different, as Betjeman put it, from all others in England. Wolverton opened in 1862, along with the rest of the line. It was in the same year that the Sandringham estate was purchased as a birthday present for the Prince of Wales, later King Edward VII. Situated a little over 2 miles from Sandringham House, the station was well used by the royal family and visiting dignitaries, with no fewer than 645 royal trains calling at the station between 1884 and 1911. Royal patronage saw to it that the original station building was extensively reconstructed and enhanced in the Tudor style. Today, it is wonderfully preserved as a museum. During his call at the station, Betjeman remarked at the ornate brickwork, and we can see an example here on this pillar. He commented also on the lamp topped with a crown outside the station's main entrance. It still stands today. Craftsmanship is to be found in every aspect of the station's construction. Let's take a closer look at the signal box on the south side of the level crossing. Perhaps most striking is the way the building and cottage have been incorporated into one another. The line between Lynn and Wolverton was doubled in 1898, no doubt offering additional convenience for royal parties, but also for the transport of produce to and especially from the Sandringham estate. The station master's house, a remarkable property wholly in keeping with the station's style, must have made for a grand and prestigious posting. The last royal train to call at the station did so in 1966. Prior to announcing the closure of the line in 1969, British Rail had inquired as to whether the Queen would be interested in purchasing the royal waiting room. She declined, but agreed that King's Lynn would be Sandringham House's nearest railhead, thereby opening the way to the line's closure. The station had its role to play in ceremonial duties, such as the funeral of the Queen's father, King George VI. On the morning of the 6th of February, 1952, he was found dead in his bed at Sandringham House. On the 11th of February, his coffin was transported by train to London, where he would lie in state in Westminster Abbey. Paying their respects to this much admired king, thousands lined the train's route. We leave Wolverton now and cross Stursingham Bog, which Betjeman considered to be a mix of the landscapes of Surrey and Scotland. After 2 miles, trains would call at Dersingham. 8 miles and 17 chains from King's Lynn, the station marks the halfway point on our journey. We here view the station from the southern end of the platform. Just as Wolverton presents one with an exceptional station, so Dersingham provides one with a station far more typical of those to be found on the King's Lynn to Hunstanton line. Better still, though it now lives on as a builder's merchants, many of the fine original features remain in situ. The station house is now a private residence, and the canopies, which are of the Great Eastern Railway's design, appear in fine order. A closer look at the Hunstanton platform shows that it too has retained its character 50 years since the closure of the line. So we depart the station. Having taken a broadly northward course since King's Lynn, the railway took a reasonably sharp turn west, whereupon it reached the next station. Similar in style and character to Dersingham, Snetcham too was constructed out of local carstone. 4 sidings diverged from the main line to the north of the station, and goods traffic comprised coal and agricultural produce. Upon alighting his train here, John Betjeman remarked, "I can think of few pleasanter places to hang about in on a sunny afternoon than Snetcham Station." Today, the familiar outline of the main station building can still be found and is a private residence, whilst to the right of the picture, the goods shed, which Betjeman described as looking like a primitive Methodist chapel, has been converted into a home. The granary building, which was served by its own siding, still stands at the station's north end. Facing east towards Snetcham, we see the course of the trackbed as our onward journey continues. And indeed, since so much of the trackbed between Lynn and Hunstanton is now on private land, we have had little opportunity to take a closer look. Here, on the south margin of Snetcham Woods, tall grass and trees now grow where rails once lay, whilst the lichened fence posts which guarded the railway from trespass lean by the line side, with more substantial examples to be found ever deeper in the woodland. The railway now turned north once more, still skirting the forest. And through this shallow cutting. And from here, in the early morning fog, we can determine the railway's northbound path with the help of the hedgerow. Now a track for agricultural vehicles, the railway proceeded straight as an arrow for the remainder of its course. And here, facing north, it passes through what is now a caravan park and into the south of the village of Heacham, where the crossing keeper's house on South Beach Road can still be found. Once again, a caravan park occupies the trackbed at this point. "3 miles since departing Snetcham, our penultimate station is to be found. Heacham, for much of its life, was in fact a junction station, providing an interchange as it did for services calling all stations to Wells. This branch closed in 1953. Today, Heacham Station is, like others on the line, a private residence, but unlike others, it also offers holiday accommodation in the converted waiting rooms, or else a former British Rail first-class coach. Slowing down in readiness for their final stop, trains would pass through what is now a car park, once the site of multiple sidings and, behind the camera, an engine shed. So, after 16 miles, trains would reach Hunstanton and the line's terminus. In the summer months, one could expect to see the station with trains simmering on all lines as they ended their journey or prepared for the return run, with carriages vacated hurriedly by those urgently seeking the sun and sea, or else packed with the same tourists, holiday makers and day trippers glum at the prospect of returning home. Today, there is nothing. Nothing but the regrettably familiar tale of so many lost railways across the land. The station buildings have been swept away and replaced by nothing more imaginative than a car park. This southward-facing view of the station gives a clear impression of the railway's presence. Tucked away on the car park's eastern perimeter, the coal office, with its tall chimney, is the station's only survivor, with this signal post, a commemorative detail added at a later date. The Sandringham Hotel, at the foot of the picture, was conveniently located at the station's north end. It was demolished in 1967 and in subsequent years replaced with this less elegant structure. Here, having alighted his train, Betjeman pointed out the green, which remains, and the nice outline of the buildings on its margins, save for the concrete lamp standard, which now, too, is gone. The King's Lynn to Hunstanton line may have been used and made famous by the royal family, but it was a railway which foremost served the public. The ascent of the motorcars, convenience and comfort played its part in the railway's diminution. But today, with the roads to this coastal town often jammed in the summer months, travelling by train seems to be a much more appealing prospect. So we reach our journey's end, here on this bracing wide Norfolk coast. I hope you enjoyed this film. Please subscribe to, share and watch Rediscovering Lost Railways.